The Okeefe's lawsuit puts everyone in a very tricky situation that I don't think they were planning for, and I don't see a lot of people talking about this. So welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Yes, you heard me right. The Okeefe's lawsuit puts both themselves and Karen Read in a sticky situation. So let's hit the overview of the complaints and the fair opinion missing from this story. And if that's something you're missing and you prefer a more open conversation, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. The family of John O'Keefe, the Boston police officer who was passed away in January of 2022, filed a wrongful passing suit Monday against his ex-girlfriend Karen Read in 2 bars in Canton, Massachusetts. Read, 44, has been accused of backing over O'Keefe with her car after the couple spent the night bar hopping. The O'Keefe family has accused the bars, McCarthy's and the Waterfall Bar and Grill, of overserving Read that the family says led to O'Keefe's passing. O'Keefe's brother, Paul O'Keefe, is the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit. Seems like he's missing some people in this lawsuit, and we'll get to that in a minute. The family is seeking $500,000 in damages from Read. The lawsuit argues that Read should be held financially responsible for O'Keefe's next of kin, his 14-year-old niece who lost companionship, comfort, protection, care, and advice when O'Keefe passed. O'Keefe was acting as his niece's surrogate parent at the time of his passing, and she is one of the plaintiffs listed in the lawsuit. Read was previously charged with second-degree committing manslaughter under the influence of alcohol and fleeing the scene of personal injury and passing. She has pled not guilty. On July 1st, a Massachusetts judge declared a mistrial because the jury could not reach a unanimous decision on all 3 charges. Read is expected to stand trial again on January 27th of 2025. But it's important to keep in mind all these are just allegations. Karen Read hasn't been found guilty of anything. But let's get to the specifics here. In the civil complaint, the family claims that, for months leading up to O'Keefe's passing, Read picked fights, experienced jealousy, and had delusions of John O'Keefe's unfaithfulness. And we all heard this stuff at trial. Was there some arguing? Yes. Did it seem like they got in a fight every now and then? Yes. But let's be honest here, so does 100% of every other single couple in this country. They fight, they argue, there's disagreements and there's issues. But did it reach to a level of rage? Did it reach to a point where Karen Read said, I've got to get rid of this guy? That's where individual perception comes in, and you can let me know your perception of that particular part of this trial down in the comments below. To me personally, at that particular point, hearing all that stuff come out in trial, I wasn't necessarily convinced one way or the other. The O'Keefes agree with the prosecution's argument that on the night of January 29, 2022, Read and O'Keefe were drinking and arguing after a night out when she dropped him off at a friend's house around midnight and then intentionally backed over him with her car before driving away. Read knew or had a reason to know of the grave risk of injury or passing to John, the O'Keefes said in a complaint. The family said O'Keefe's injuries or passing resulted from defendant Read's decision to back the car into him. Now this is where things get tricky for the O'Keefes, and it may lead to a larger issue that I'll get to later. But first, no one at the Waterfall said they were arguing. No one at the Waterfall said they heard them arguing. To me, when I looked at that video of them at the waterfall, everything seemed perfectly normal. The second hurdle they're going to have to overcome with this is that independent FBI investigation where those accident reconstruction experts proved that car did not hit John O'Keefe. That's not mine or anybody else's opinion as a creator. That is actual science. It came out in court. And it was proved that car did not do that. But this is a fair channel, so it's also interesting to note that it seems the jury didn't put as much weight on that independent expert as we did on social media. Now, was that due to them not knowing who exactly paid them to conduct this investigation? Or were they just not simply putting that much stock into anything said by the defense? But since what that expert proved is true, then she had no reason to know of any grave injury. Of course, if she's found guilty at the next trial, this particular part of the argument becomes more valid. But right now, the science is working against them. The family also claimed that Read woke up O'Keefe's 14-year-old niece, who lived at O'Keefe's residence around 4:30 a.m., and talked about hitting O'Keefe with her SUV. So is it I hit him, I may have hit him, or did a snowplow hit him? Honestly, at this particular point, I've heard so many variations of that, I can't keep up with what the truth is. But everybody seems so certain that she said, I hit him, even though testimony said otherwise. And this lawsuit clearly mentions the word may. But this is where things could get tricky for Karen Read. In a lot of ways, she's almost going to need to testify during this civil trial to prove her innocence. And I don't view this lawsuit as some sort of joint coordinated attack with the O'Keefes and the prosecution in order to set Karen Read up. I personally think the Okeefe family filed this lawsuit just so they could get it filed. And I also believe they're going to kick this lawsuit down the road until the trial is over. So Karen could, in theory, testify if she's been acquitted of these charges, and none of these things that she says at this trial will come back to bite her. Now, of course, if she's found guilty at the second trial, I don't believe she's going to testify whatsoever, nor do I think she'll care what happens in the civil trial because she's got bigger problems on her hands. But in no way, shape, or form can she get on the stand and testify during this civil lawsuit if this criminal trial is still pending. Everything she says will and can be used against her during that trial. Yahoo News reached out to two defense attorneys who represent Read in the criminal trial, Martin Weinberg and David Yannetti. Weinberg's law firm told Yahoo News that he was not involved in the civil lawsuit. Yannetti could not immediately be reached for comment. But what's missing in this lawsuit and what is potentially a very huge problem for the O'Keefe family? Now, what I saw missing is something I would add in this lawsuit if I was him was the fact that he should probably sue Canton PD and MSP. And here's why. They botched this investigation, point blank period. There's no other way to necessarily say that. Allegedly, of course. And the O'Keefe family does want to blame Karen Read for this circus. But at the same time, they're ignoring the massive chain of custody issues. They're ignoring the altered evidence and the surprisingly blatant improper evidence gathering. And to be fair, the list goes on and on. You can even talk about the witness statements being changed, the number of times we all heard the word butt dial, and phones and dogs being rehomed. So even if Karen Read did this, the state's argument falls short because of all these blunders, missteps, and improper procedures. They 100% failed to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is the state's job at the end of the day, prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not the jury's job to say, okay, let's plug all these holes in the story. Make these square pegs fit in these round holes. Now, I'm open to being wrong here, and if you disagree, please let me know, because this is an open discussion channel. But what is the potential huge problem right now for the O'Keefe family? Well, there is a possibility that after this lawsuit, they could be placing this life insurance policy at risk. Now, let me warn everybody, I'm not an expert on anything related to insurance, but what happens if these bars countersue the O'Keefe family? And while they're doing discovery requests, it's proven in court that not only were they not liable for what happened to John O'Keefe, they just happened to prove that John O'Keefe was reckless. And that, along with Karen Read being found not guilty, could potentially now open a door for that life insurance company to recoup some of those losses. Now, I'm not saying this will happen, and I'm not guaranteeing that'll happen. We're just speculating here, because we all know insurance hates to do one thing. They hate to pay out for stuff they say they'll pay out for. And we also know that they have a tendency to try to recoup losses when they see an opportunity to do so. What's happening to the O'Keefe family is absolutely tragic. John O'Keefe does deserve justice, and those families deserve answers. But this lawsuit has taken a very bad situation and could potentially make it a huge mess for everyone. But in my own unprofessional opinion, the lack of answers falls squarely on the shoulders of law enforcement. Let me know where you're at with all this down in the comments below. Y'all be safe now.